Doug's Eye here once again, and today's video is going to be about my shop system build. It consists of a pair of SRNE 10,000 watt inverters. The battery bank size is going to be 114 kilowatt hours. It's been an interesting build, to say the least. I'll go into quite a bit of detail on how I built this, but for those of you that are building your own system, maybe you'll pick up a few pointers here along the way. It does go into quite detail, and this will be a multi-part series as I build this out. If you like what you see here, hit the like and subscribe button, and thanks for watching.
So those of you who viewed one of my videos from last winter noticed I bought another big box like this. I got one just like this in my house. My battery cell's in it. I got it all cleaned out right now. I got some DMS stuff sitting in there. He had some shelves in here, but I took them all out, and I'll be building some shelves here soon enough. So we had a big joke here on solar farm one day. I was telling them that wall space here in the shop is at a premium. We always got a piece of equipment that can always go up against the wall and keep the floor space open. So I said, I was thinking, out of the box, so, and I said literally, and so I've decided to mount my inverters here on the back side of the box. Now this end here says wall, and this end is going to go perpendicular to the wall. These are going to be mounted perpendicular to the wall, so it'll stick out from the wall that far. But basically, I just mounted some uni-strut on the back and bolting it all together. I'm right now getting ready to put my trough on the bottom, and I mount that with uni-strut too, and I'll show you that. But yeah, I think this is going to work really well. I get enough airspace around it for cooling, and it's not taking up a whole pile of wall space. So these do bolt down to the floor, and they will get anchored to the floor. So believe me, there's going to be some hefty weight there by the time I'm done. But hey, if you want to follow my lead and use one of these boxes, this is one way of doing it. So I'm using a little uni-strut here, a short piece to hang my trough. I got one on that end already fastened, and what I'm using here is these little serrated bolts. I got a round head on the other side, and I just hold them in on the back side with a magnet. Put a couple washers on here, 5/16 washers, and then I run a 1/4 inch run with a flange nut and tighten her down, and I got a magnet holding it on the back side, and I just draw her in with the impact. Works really good. So later. So you see here I use an 1 1/4 fender washer, and then I got just a small 1/4 inch washer and a flange nut there. Eventually I'll be putting a lock nut on there, but we're just getting everything sized up and trial run here, so I'll get the trough mounted next. So on these here, being the vertical, I ended up using the spring style here. Now for mounting inverters I use the cup style, and they're alright, but when they're mounted, uni-struts mounted vertical, they'll tend to slide down on you. And those are the squares I used on top of the uni-strut, in between the inverter and the uni-strut, sandwiching. That gives you a nice flat spot to put it on here. I'll show you that. You can see it's right in behind there, and the same thing up on the top here. So on these SRNE inverters, one thing you're going to find out is these holes here are halfway between 3/4 and 1 inch. So I have to use a step drill, and I'm going to bore that out to 1 inch. I'm going to use 1 inch conduit on those. On the one down here on the end behind the switch, that's for where your PV wires come in, and that's an oblong hole. Wouldn't believe me. I thought, wow. So one way of doing it was I punched it out to 1 inch, used basically a knockout plug that I punched a 3/4 inch hole in, and I put it in that way. I bent the tabs over just using the channel locks. I'm just throwing out some ideas here. I experiment a little bit. So then on the next one, then I went over here, and this one I just bored the hole out. I punched it out actually to a 1 inch and used a 1 inch conduit connector, and that's okay. I think that's the way I'm going to end up doing it. You end up with a slight little gap on the ends though, so You know, if the switch wasn't here, you could put a 1 1/4 to like 1-inch adapter in there, and that'd fix that. What I use for punching holes, I just got one of these cheap ones here off of Amazon. They're like $80, but that thing works just fabulous for a lot of this stuff. You know, some of it you use a step drill, and some of it you use a hole saw. I don't prefer a hole saw. I prefer the step drill and the punch. So, you know, anything larger, I usually end up punching. But like these here are going to have to use a step drill just to get them bored out. They're just slightly under 1 inch. So I'll get that done and get my conduit ran, and I'll be back. So the 2 holes over here on the AC input and output side, I used to use a step drill on those. And then I made my way over to here, and as you can see, just got my hole punch set up. They don't have it centered very good anyway, so I'm just lining up the one edge here and eyeballing it center, and I'll do the same thing on this one. Can't use a step drill in there, it'll hit the studs, and I don't feel like disassembling half the thing. So anyway, I'll get these punched out and we'll move on to the next step. Well, I got the first one punched. As you can see, it's pretty tight here, the separator plate. And so I ended up using a couple of washers here, otherwise I didn't have enough throw on it, and the spacer they got, it makes it too tall. So I get this one done, but yeah, it's tight, but you can get her in there. Those of you that don't have a hole punch, well, good luck. Later. So I'm marking out my holes for my conduit, my trough here. I just put some tape down here, masking tape, and then I measure out and get my center line established. I just set up my carpenter square. You can see I got to the edge, and I just measure that into my closest hole. I know my hole is 35 millimeters in diameter, and I just add 17 to whatever the reading is here off the closest thing, and mark it down here from the edge of my square down here. See, I just mark it there. When I got that all done, then I'll actually set up another square like this, speed square, big one, and I just got a short ruler here. It slips up in behind there, and then I can check it and make sure that I'm centered. So like this hole here, if you put the square on there, it'll be square. So if you're off a little bit, like this last hole is oblong, so you know I measured it a couple different ways, and basically I end up with 2 marks close together, and I'll just split it. That'll get you close enough. So anyway, I'll get these center punched and get the holes punched out with the hole punch and start cutting some conduit. So I'll be back later. So I got these all drilled for my shank on my punch. Took tape off and got a vacuum cleaner and clean all the shavings up. I run everything out with a step drill now. Another way you can mark it is you can take your trough and hold it up against the bottom of your inverter if you got a helper, clamp it up there, mark your hole, and I've done that, but I like this way a lot better. It's a little more accurate, but it's a choice, I guess. Depends on how clean you want it to look. I always have the saying, you should always make it look like you knew what you were doing, even if you don't know what you're doing, right? Okay, later. So this is how I measure for conduit. I just stick my tape measure up through the hole and got to the bottom there, and it looks like it's going to be about 17 and a half, 17 5/8, and then I'll just cut all my conduit here all the same length. Now the reason I mount this on a uni strut here is I can loosen my bolts up later, slide the piece on down so I can get my conduit with the end connectors all in them slid down in there, and then I just slide it right back up and tighten my bolts up. So I know I'm a little bit high here, and so I'll probably just go up to 17 and 5/8, but yeah, it took me less time to punch some holes in than it took me to drill all the pilot holes for the mandrel to stick through it with the step drill. So anyway, next step. So this is my preferred method of cutting conduit. It's like a tubing cutter, but it's not. It's a conduit cutter. Made by Klein. On the end here, they give you an extra die that's for 1/2 and 3/4. You just change it out. I have the inch die in here because I'm using inch conduit. But if you look closely, it's got a step in there, and basically you run it down like a pipe cutter. But that step hits, then you just take it off. Then I just go either use a tubing bender to snap it off, or I'll just sit on a block of wood or something, step on it, and it'll snap right off. So nice rig. It doesn't have much cleanup after it. If you do have a burr in there or anything, I use a step drill anymore. I used to just use a utility knife with a good sharp blade and run around on the inside, just ream that out and clean any edge up that might be in there, any burrs. So moving on, I'm cutting all my pieces. So I got the conduit all ran and turned the box around here. I got some work to do on this end. I wanted my cells to be anchored to this end. As you can see, there's a hole there and a couple there and one down there, and I got another one there I've got to fill in. But what I've done is he had welded the pieces in here, and I'm going to have to get rid of them because I want to anchor my cells against this wall. So I got to do some cleanup here and get them all fixed and ground down until it's flat, and then working on my shelves. So be back later. So yeah, I got these cleaned up and filled in and ground back down, and this was one of the jobs I was just regretting having to do, and it was going to be dirty, and it definitely was dirty. So, but they're all cleaned up. I've decided I'm going to put another plate before the wall and another plate on that end, and because these aren't perfectly flat, there's some warpage there from when he welded it before and stuff, and this way my two surfaces on my cell ends will be flat. So I started marking out for my cell distance. I had picked up some 1-inch square tubing that was 11 gauge wall, and I don't think it's going to be thick enough. This cabinet's bigger than my other cabinet. This cabinet is 61.5 inches long, and the other one was only 52, so you know that 10 inches makes a difference. So I'll dig through the pile and see what I got. But anyway, you can see my progress here, and then the next time you see it, I'll be having some shelves in here. One thing you're going to run into here is on your AC input and output, you can only get 6 gauge wire in there. I had a 500 foot roll of number 4 laying around, and I tried a short piece I had, and it won't fit in there unless you cut strands off. So basically you got to run number 6 from here. You're going to run down through your conduit and your trough. You come back up here into a breaker panel, and you're going to backfeed that number 6 into these pair of breakers here. Okay, the idea behind that is then you're going to combine it on the bus bar and be able to run number 4 off your terminals here and then back to your main panel. Okay, so a huge edit here. You know, originally I had a 125 amp square D box, and it was too big for the opening here. I just didn't have enough space. I didn't like it. It kind of was pretty crowded here, and it would fit, but it was very tight, and I didn't like that. So, you know, I'd gone back to a 100 amp box, you know, to make it a little smaller, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to run 50 amp breakers in it, and I had some number 4 wire laying around, and then I started wiring this up. I realized, yeah, you know, these are 60 amps, 65 amps output here on the, is what they want. They want a breaker rated for 63 amps coming out of the inverter. I don't know why they don't just put a breaker in the inverter and have it over with. I think the HES series does, but these don't, so, you know, you got to provide something yourself. You know, if you're going to run more than 2 inverters, okay, using a combiner box like this probably wouldn't be such a good idea. I'd just mount a breaker on the output of each one, and then just use like Polaris connectors or a junction block to connect them all. So anyway, you're going to see that 100 amp square D box here in some of the video footage. But in the end, I checked around. I did find this one here that would fit, and it fit in here real nice. I got plenty of room around it. It took a lot to find this one, but you know, it'll work for what I'm going to do here. If I do it over again, maybe I would have just also ran just my AC wires, like my outputs from my inverters. I'd have just ran right into this box. You know, you could have done that easy enough. But anyway, I'll get you the part number here of the box, and then we'll continue on. This is the box. That's the part number used. It's not a very expensive box. I got it from Home Depot, and they shipped it right to my door for free. So yeah, normally I use a square D box, a QO, and I prefer those copper bus bar, and they're a lot heavier. On these boxes, this backing isn't very heavy. As you can see, it flexes here when I pull on it. If you wanted to pull that breaker out, you're going to want to hold the other side, you know, and if you had power coming to it, you'd want to cut the power, you know, and use something to hold it here, or a screwdriver or something. If you had another breaker, yeah, you could pull the one out easy enough. But excuse me, they're not overly heavy, but whatever, it'll do the job here. So you do need a hold down kit on these because these are back fed breaker. You take like your square D here, your terminals are exposed here on the end. If this was bumped on, the wires connected to it and they were hot, somebody get electrocuted if they touch those terminals. On the BR, they're not as exposed here on the end here where it snaps on the bus bar. There's a little exposure here on the end, but it ain't too bad. These probably are a little better deal. As far as these BR breakers, this is not a clamp. It runs a set screw down into the V. And if you're using stranded wire, you're going to want to use a ferrule like I have here. That's why I left this one out. I use a number 5 ferrule out of the kit, and that kit, I show that in the little WAN box video. On the V here, if you run just the wire, stick it in there, and run the screw down in there, it'll spread the strands apart, and you'll have some strands that aren't making any contact. So on these particular terminals, you will need a ferrule. There is no way around it. As far as the hold down kit, this is a hold down kit. Let's see if I get the part number here for you. Come into focus. But anyone that fits a BR series breaker will work. And what comes in it is this long screw. And then they got this little plastic piece. Okay, this plastic piece you're not going to need with this particular box. The deal is on the older ones they had a metal tray in here, and then this piece would snap on in there, and then you'd run your screw down into there, and that's how those were held down. On these boxes they have a boss that sticks out, and you just put your breaker in, and you run your long screw down through your breaker, and it runs into that boss, and that's your hold down kit. You can't pull that out. Okay. I got this wire run here in the right hand inverter. I added a bus bar, and I'll probably run all my grounds up through here. As far as mounting this box, it's not a surface mount box, it's more of a flush mount box. So I had to take the chase nipple out, and I had to use a close 1.5 nipple. Just used nut on each side and on the bottom and spaced it all out, and that worked out really well. Of course, insulating bushing top and bottom. So other than that, I'm going to run the power out the top and continue on and run it up over the top of the box towards the wall. Then I have to use a piece of flex where the connection will be to the wall. So moving on, things are looking good. So later. So let's discuss the wire sizes here. On your inverters, the biggest size wire you can get in there is number 6, and believe me, that's all you're going to get in there. Okay. Now, if you were to put a breaker box right below here, or like a 70 amp, you can get those in a square D. Then you could just run 6 down that far, and then you could continue on with 4 or whatever size you wanted, and that'd work out pretty good. Then you could just combine it out of a Polaris. Okay. So you're running your 6 down, and then you're running your box here. Okay. And so the idea here is you're going to run your 6s in here, and then you're going to run a bigger wire out here back to your breaker box. Okay, these wires here are going to be you need at least probably number 2, but I ended up using number 1. It cost me $50 more or $40 more, plus I think $10 more shipping to have number 1 shipped 250 feet of it, because I got about 40 feet run here to the breaker box, and then I want to feed power back over here, so these will switch automatically back to grid power. So I'm going to run number 1 all the way through, and of course that required 1.25 inch conduit. I can't run 3 wires, and I'm going to run 2 separate conduit, because if you're running more than 3 conductors in a conduit, then you got to start derating, and I don't want to deal with that. So it gets expensive. Yeah, I went down to Menards yesterday, and it was $650. I had to buy another breaker box, because when I come back with my power from grid, okay, and I'm going to run number 1 to that box, and I'm going to have to mount that box on the wall. Then I got to split it off and run number 6 to each inverter here, because we have, those size terminals. It's kind of a pain, but, you work with what you got here, and that's the way it is. So, yep, number 6 from the inverters to your combiner panel, okay? Or if you use a breaker panel here, then you can run 6 down to that, just a short run, and then just run whatever size you want after that. Then number 1, I'm running back minimum of number 2. Okay, I know some guys have been running number 2, but I'm going to use number 1. It didn't cost that much more. Advantage to that is later on, if I want to go to a bigger size inverter or something like that, I'll have the wire in place too. So anyway, later. So for setting my battery cables here, I'm putting a Lynx bus bar down underneath the trough, and I had gone down to my house and measured that. I did that the same way and really liked the way I did it, so I went down and measured that out. But I need to find the halfway point between the two inverters. I want to keep my cable length the same. So basically I'm going here where my battery cables are here, I'm going in the center there, and then I'm going over here and the same thing, you know. And we know that the conduit is the same length, so that doesn't matter. Basically we're looking at the thing here, it's 33 inches, so I just go over here to 16 and a half, and then I'll mark the mark on my bottom, and then I'll plot that all out, and I'll show you all my dimensions here and get my cable glands mounted. So later. Alright, I got it drawn out here on the bottom of the trough. This is my center line, okay, that I trimmed before. This is 1.25 inches from the center line. This is this one. This is 3 inches from the center line. This is 1.5 inches from the back side. This is 1.25 inches from the back side, and this one is 2.5 inches from the back side. Basically, your 2-aught cable are going to go in these, and your 4-aught's going to go in there. So, and I measured it out in my house, and that's exactly what I had. And so I'll get these holes all drilled and start putting cable glands in. I think I'm short one cable gland for 2-aught. I got some ordered, but I have enough for the 4-aught. But I don't think I got enough cable for everything anyway, so later. So I got the cable glands all in there, and I got the Lynx mounted here. Basically I mount it the same way. I just used some uni-strut, couple of them square plates, and I made an aluminum bracket here on the bottom. I had to use a piece of angle iron. I wanted a little bit of distance in between here because you can't get your glands tight enough, so you're gonna have a slight bend to your cable when you put it all in there. That part's done. Getting pretty close to getting a lot of this done. A lot of the other stuff like Class D fuses and that will go in when I get it wired here. So I've been working on shelves, and I'll get to that here next. Well, I'm back at another dirty job. I got the cutoff wheel here, and cutting these uprights out. They got a small tack weld here every so far, and I'm just cutting them out. I need to remove those. I decided to change a few things here. I was marking up for my shelves, and you know, those will stay the same height, but cell arrangement's going to change. It's been a few weeks since I worked on this, and of course, you know, it's always in the back of your mind how you're going to do this or that. Well, the other day I was looking at how I was going to run my battery cables, and so I decided to change how I was going to do it. So I'll get these here cut off, and then I'll show you what the next step is later. So I got them cut off and ground down flush, and one of the best things ever happened in the last 30 years is flat disc and cordless grinder, small ones. So as far as my cells here, I'm changing my arrangement. In my cabinet in my house, the cells went from one end of the cabinet to the other. That cabinet was 52.5 long. This cabinet is 60.5. That cabinet was 12 inches deep, and this one's 20. So I had this rolling around the back of my mind, of course, you know, and that's what I'll do. I'll back away from a project, and then I'll think of something. The other day I went to go run my battery cables, thinking how I was going to run them, and I decided that instead I'm going to put a double wide row here on short on each end, and that'll leave me an open space in the middle. I'll be able to mount my BMSs there and everything, and my cables will exit out the back side into my trough. So I'll give you the dimensions here on the plate. There'll be a plate on each end of it, and there'll be 4 on this side, and I'll have the ability to add 4 more later. So that would bring the total here, this cabinet, which I'm not going to need, but you know, I got the space, but that would take it up to like 114 kilowatt hours in this cabinet. So I'll get the plate out here, and I'll show you how I made it. So basically, if you watch my other video, you'll know that I usually use 7 and 7/8 in between the holes here, and that's what I did here. And same thing there, 7 and 7/8. The plate itself is 17 inches long end to end, and of course it's the 8-inch wide bar stock. You know, you can get this 6061 in an 8-inch wide width. Yeah, it's spendy. You know, I had some drop laying around before, but I gotta go get some more. But you know, I like using the aluminum. Again, always chamfer all my holes. Make sure I clean all my edges up. I don't want any burrs anywhere or anything. But that way you don't poke anything into your cells and possibly cause some damage or a short. So made 8 of these. It took me a while, but hey, it's worth it. So I started working my base here. Basically, my shelves are going to be 8 1/4 times 2, and I'll tell you the reason why. I'm using fiber cement siding for shelf material, and that comes in an 8 1/4 inch width. So my shelves are going to be 16.5 inches wide. Remember I was mentioning about the 1/4 inch tubing, you know, well, I measured it wrong in the house. It was 1 1/4 inch, and so that's what I'm making out of, 1 1/4 inch tubing. And these 2 bars here on the inside are just spacers. Then we're cut at 14, and that gives me a total width here from here to here is 16.5. Okay. Total length here is 25 inches from the wall down to this end. So comes out with 8 cells and using foam. I'm not sure if I'm going to put the FR4 separator material in there or not, but they come to like 24 inches non-compressed, so you know that'll give me a little room on the end here. And that included my plates. So I got to add another bar in between here to hold the center of the fiber cement siding. Yeah, I got to get the base started, and then I'll just start building shelves up from there. The plate, even though it's 17 inches wide, will only hang over 1/4 inch. And I wanted the plate 1/4 inch from the back wall. So basically I've got a pair of 1/2 inch bolts sticking in behind there with the heads cut off. Reason I use the bolts is the bottom corner there has got a little radius to it, and this way it's more accurate. Basically that'll give me a 1/4 inch gap to my plate on each side, and I'll show you what I'll use there to keep the plate insulated from the sidewall. So moving right along here, I'll get these done and I'll move on to the next shelf right above it. Sometimes having the right tool makes a heck of a difference. I bought this uni punch off of eBay, and I made a little fence on it here to punch a whole line of 3/8 holes in sheet metal, but I got 3/8 die in it and 3/8 punch, and I got 24 of these little angle iron brackets to weld in my shelves. So I want a 3/8 hole in them, so instead of drilling them, we're just going to punch them. So that's how long it takes. Nice little hole there, so better get at it. So I got a set of shelves here I made. If you get looking here, they're just about 26 3/4 from this end down the edge of this post, and that'll just fit me in between this door opening from here to here. That way I can pull it out and finish painting it. Basically I welded them up and then run them through the blast cabinet, cleaned them up, and then primed them here, and then I stuck it in here, got my holes drilled on the ends, and then got my post tacked in here right now. And then I'll pull it all out, finish welding it and painting it. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I got 2 pieces of fiber cement down here, and then this is my master template. And basically I'm using transfer punch and punching the first hole, drilling it, putting a bolt in it, and then I'll just finish doing the other 5 bolts. And I got 8 shelves here to do, so yeah, it'll take me a while, but it's coming along. I did get 1.5 inch rigid conduit here, drilled through the back wall, and that's where my battery cables go in. So took a little measuring. I have that breaker panel on the other side, and make sure I didn't hit anything, and I'll show the other side later. So here's the other side. I shoved it up probably about as far as I could get it here. I probably could have gone another 1/4 inch higher, but you got to remember, you got to be able to swing the nut. This nut here will actually be gone, and then I'll put an insulating bushing on in its place. Basically, it ended up halfway in between all my cable glands, so I was pretty happy. I could have gone with 2 smaller holes and then just ran a cable through each one, but I think this will work just fine. So later. So I'm making some brackets here to mount my IMOs. Basically all I'm doing is using a Z bracket that I never use. I bought it for my truck camper and decided to go a different route, but all I'm doing is scribing a line across here and cutting it off so it looks like this. A little clean out with a file or flap disc, and then I'll bolt it to the back of my IMO. I got the first IMO mounted here. When you put your bolts inside there, have the guts out of it, makes it a lot easier. There's 2 small screws that hold it in there. You can see my bracket here, and then that allows it to line up here down the bottom with your conduit. So for mounting it, I'm just using a serrated bolt. That's why I wanted to drill these first, So got my other one ready to go, and I got one more hole to drill, and I'm done.
So after I got the IMOs hung here, I tore it all back down, sanded the box down, got it painted. The next video is going to show putting that all back together and start getting some wiring done. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, catch some rays, and we'll see you later.